Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I am delighted to be joined by Jim Orr. Jim, you're going to have an opportunity to give us your take on the last 14 days in the world of Celtic, but in particular, let's focus on this week. And I need to ask you the question, how much of a Champions League coucher was Leipzig before the game, Jim?
You see, couchers are for watching games on the telly. See, if you're at the games, it's completely different. I mean, I think if that was in Leipzig, then that's a two and a half coucher, something like that, possibly. But just what can you say about Tuesday night? I mean, it was just. I've been in a lot of matches over many years, and that was literally the most enjoyable. I think that's the best word that I can use, because when people talk about was it the best this or the best that, it was just so enjoyable, and that's why you go and watch football. Games like that is exactly why you go and watch football. Two teams going at it, trying to win. Hi, Alan, how you doing? Jumped in.
Afternoon, morning, evening,
afternoon. What saying? Two teams going at it.
Yeah.
From the first whistle. As a fan in the stadium, mentally draining watching the game. You're kicking every ball. Goodness knows what it's like for the players. We went there in hope rather than expectation. And what was it, Alan? 60% possession, 17 shots to goal. It was incredible. It was mental, absolutely mental. In the second half, exceptional. Totally bossed the best, or the second best team in the Bundesliga. Hatate on another night could have scored 3 or 4. My mate Nick, what can you say? What a performance for the man. Rose to the occasion. You'd have to say one of the best results in modern times at Celtic Park, I think. Probably one of the best European atmospheres. The way things are going these days with the disco lights and everything that goes with it. It was just, when you look back to the Seville season, I think all the second legs were all away, weren't they? So there was never a game where you felt that's us in the quarter final or that's us in the final. So it was just a very unique atmosphere. The GB with the Tifo was brilliant. You'll Never Walk Alone was brilliant. How the team stuck at it, that 10-15 minute spell when it was really sticky, you're just thinking, just stick in here, and then Nick comes up with the wonder goal, and just everything about the night was just brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. And that's, as I said earlier, that's why you go and watch football, because the SPFL, I've said many times, it's pretty turgid. It's a bit of a chore. You talked about what's happened in the last 14 days. I think the good thing about coming on maybe every fortnight, or maybe like Alan every month, that you've got a kind of, sometimes you've got a number of games which you can look at. So it's not just a kind of the reaction to the most recent game. And Motherwell and Dundee were heavy going games, and then Aberdeen last week, great. And then just Tuesday was brilliant. There's nothing more I can say. It was an absolutely brilliant night and a great time to be a Celtic fan.
Yeah, we'll be unpacking some of that stuff with yourself, Alan. Jim was delighted. I was delighted. And, it followed a brilliant performance and result against Aberdeen as well. A game in which, it's not like we turned up against Aberdeen and they were just lambs to the slaughter and they were rotten. Took us about half an hour to break the deadlock. We had to really work for it. And you've seen a style of play that you thought to yourself, can we really translate some of this into a European game? I know it's different playing at home, but we couldn't do it after the St Johnstone 6-0 win. We couldn't do it to the same degree under Ange Postecoglou, playing his style of football, and he wasn't going to change. But we went out there on Tuesday night, Alan, and as Jim says, a memorable game. Like, people are talking about it as one of their most memorable European moments of the last, let's say, 10, 15 years beyond. We were talking, obviously, about it being 3 games on the bounce at home in the Champions League, first time since 2007. Overall, what did you make of the performance yourself, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I was delighted, first of all, to come on and have such a positive Jim rant. That's just lovely to hear.
Well, thing.
50 minutes left.
50 minutes. I'll fill that time in. I don't know.
Yeah, we can sure. That was rubbish, wasn't it? Now listen, it was just great fun, and I think So always looking for context, I guess, is So agree with all Jim said. Just as an event, as an occasion, as a spectacle, uh, as a performance, and there's a lot of nuance and detail in there that we'll get to. Yeah, all very good. But in terms of context, I mean, you said 10 years there, so that's coincidentally the amount of time I've been collecting kind of my own detailed data. So if we I know that's a bit arbitrary, but I suppose football's changed a lot in terms of even since certainly since Martin O'Neill's team playing in Europe, and even since Neil Lennon's team playing in Europe. Um, so that 10 years, this is only the sixth time that we've recorded a win against what I'd call like a tier one club. So that's a team from one of the top five leagues, which that changes. It's always England, Spain, Italy, Germany. I'm including France in that. Sometimes it's Portugal, sometimes it's Holland, but mainly it's been France. And two of those have been against Lazio. Two of those been against Leipzig, and then one against Stade Rennes, and one of them against Real Betis. Neither of the latter two you could really call sort of top level teams, really. So it's been slim pickings as far as wins against that caliber of opposition. So it should definitely be um, rejoiced at. There have been some notable draws, of course, and many of them have come under Rodgers. The two draws against Man City, for example, a draw in Germany against Borussia, home draw against Atletico Madrid, and of course the draw in Bergamo. So those are all notable, results, if you like. But I think again, that all suggests that, was it just one of those days when variance fell Celtic's way and we got lucky and all that, and it really wasn't. It really wasn't. I think that was the pleasing element of it, is that if you look at all of those games, and there's about 37 games that Celtic have played against, let's call it these tier one clubs, in not a single one of them has Celtic managed to achieve an expected goal difference of even 1.5. Now, why do I mention that? Because 1.5 is a little bit like the magic number. If you get an expected goal difference in a single game of 1.5 and over, the chances of you losing kind of tends to drop off quite considerably.
Right.
If you're anywhere around the 1xG difference, and it doesn't really matter which way it is, it tends to be elements of variance. And what do I mean by that? Good finishing, bad finishing, good goalkeeping, bad goalkeeping, good refereeing decisions, bad refereeing decisions. All those kind of bounce to the ball this way and that. All those things tend to have a disproportionate impact on the game. And what history shows us is that against those top tier one clubs, Celtic are almost never going to get to that comfort zone. But they got quite close against Leipzig. And I think what is pleasing is that it wasn't a game. There was some variance that went Celtic's way, but they earned it and they deserved it, and the performance deserved it. It's two good performances, two good outcomes in a row. The draw in Italy and the home win today. Like you said, 3 home wins in a row now. So that's starting to create a small bit of momentum in terms of Celtic's performances against those better teams. But for me, it was just the manner of the performance, the majority of the performance, and specifically, it was the ability of Celtic's players to play under pressure, to play with opponents who are very athletic, very young in most cases, pressing them hard. We were able to play out of tight situations. That's the mark of a good team. We responded positively to adversity, although that 15-minute wobble was very much the dark place in the game. But we managed our way out of it, and then we really managed the game very maturely once we got a lead. So those are the elements that I think are important going forward in terms of that's what we now want to see in future performances at this level.
You were talking there about the maturity of the performance against probably the naivety of the performance against Borussia Dortmund, Jim. And I'm always at pains to say you can learn from both of those experiences. You can go to Germany and get absolutely humiliated, but as long as you can take some kind of learning, what did you do wrong? Are we able to improve on that? Can we avoid it in the future? Then you take something from what is otherwise a really disappointing night. And then the other night, all the positives that we can take from a performance like that. What are we learning, do you think, as a team under Brendan Rodgers? Because we kept talking about pragmatism, Jim, when Brendan came back. Will we be less gung-ho? Will we be more pragmatic? And actually, if you look at some of the results last season in Europe, some of them were almost like nearly nights for Celtic, and other ones were decent enough results. And we look at kind of small margins, losing 2 players to red cards away from home. You're never going to win that game. It's not happening. Very unlucky against Lazio. Great draw against Atletico Madrid. Maida getting sent off early doors away in Madrid. But I think this season what we're seeing is the fruits of the labour, as it were. Are we learning? Because I know that there are certain nights, Jim, where everything just clicks and you get a great result. But I would like to think, because it's on the back of the Atalanta, another mature performance, that we are learning at this level.
I think after the 8 games are completed, I think that's a good time to look back and see where we are. I think what Alan did there was actually articulate something I was about to say, in that what was great the other night, and what's been different from previous European big nights, maybe if you look back Juventus game, the 4-3 game, the Man U, Naka's goal, Barcelona, is that you weren't screaming for the referee to blow his whistle with 20 minutes to go. You quite easily played all night the other night because we were so good. Because usually you blow your whistle, you're sitting back thinking this is Celtic against a really good team, and we're bossing them, and we can score. And obviously Schmeichel had his saves, and the point Alan's making, a good finish and a good save, a bad miss, whatever, and all these things can happen. But I get back to the word enjoyable in terms of we're so good, and Alan talked about the 1.5 expected GD differential. That's like play all night, guys. We can play all night. We're so good. In terms of learning, I think you have to take it over a period of time. I wouldn't look too further than the next game. These are all top teams at this level. We can go out and get absolutely horsed in the next game. Who knows what's going to happen next? But what it does do is it builds confidence. If you can go to Atalanta, highest scoring team in Serie A, and they don't score against you, that must build confidence. If you get the second best team in the Bundesliga and you totally boss them, I mean, I don't know what the second half stats were, but 60% overall, in the second half we totally bossed them. So, when we're on a different, I mean, you mentioned Aberdeen there. I mean, I don't even think that's worth talking about, because the other night's on a different scale altogether. Because last time I was on, we talked about after the 2 East draw, and I said, it could have been 6, 7, 8. Maybe absolutely trounced them. And I thought I better look at the stats, because if Alan's on today, that'll sound impressive if I know what I'm talking about. But the 2 East game, we had 73% possession. The game last week we had 53% possession. The 2 East game with 32 shots a goal. Drew 2 weeks. Last week we had 12 shots a goal and scored 6 goals. So the point Alan makes about stats and how all these things kind of hang together, I said after the 2 East game with Aberdeen, we were on a different level altogether to Aberdeen. That was one of those games. And I think last Saturday, again, it was quite interesting because I stay near Hampden Park. I stay behind the, let's call it the non-Celtic end, basically. And I walked to the game and it was just all Aberdeen fans, and some guy comes across and asked me how I think it was going to go. And I was going to say, I think we'll pump you, but there's too many Aberdeen fans there. So I thought, I think we'll win quite convincingly. And he says, how'd you make that out? And then I rhymed off these 32 shots to goal last time. I think I said, tonight, I think it will click. I think so. So, that's why I'm so enthusiastic today, because that was a different level of football we played the other night. That was a different level of team we played the other night, and we competed. And it's one game, and you're not going to get too. I've seen a lot of people get excited on social media about, maybe we could get X number of points. Well, let's see what happens next with that. And people talking about this is a great format. Well, I think we think it's a great format because we've got 7 points in the bag. I think if we're sitting with 1 point, I don't think we'd be talking about the format too much. But it was just so good. And the question was, will we learn? Of course we'll learn. Every single game we learn. And the point I made before about last season's competition, we play home and we play Lager Bielka in the first game away from home and they both get sent off. So there's a learning thing at that point in time. The other night, how we managed the game when we went 2-1 up, 3-1 up, how we kept it together in that 15 minutes. Because the other thing you notice in Champions League nights is there's also a different type of fan at the games. They kind of, guys come to the big games for whatever reason. Maybe it's it's too expensive for season ticket holders, or it's too far to come in a midweek. Whatever you're kind of Rod Stewart's of this world, who got on I mean, whether it was them or not, but there was in that 10-15 minutes, there was a few mumps and moans, and you're thinking, hold on, you're playing against technically, tactically, organisationally top team in Europe.
Yeah,
just stick in there, guys. It's not like you're playing Falkirk. If you're playing Falkirk and they were dominating the game, aye, all right. If you want to moan. But there was that wee period, they had that second corner that they just missed, and the guy went through and he ballooned it over the bar. And all these moans and groans and shouting, you have to keep together. And the team have to keep together. And if you lose a game, moan after the game, but not during the game. And that's when the GB come into their own. That's when the boys come into their own, and the backing that they gave the team, and the atmosphere was great. And then once my mate Nick scores, we just took over. Brilliant.
We're going to be talking a wee bit more about your mate Nick. You've made me remember a wee point that Phil Differ makes this evening on This Is Acsom in relation to, even in the glory days, he would be at European games and people would be shouting at Steen and people would be shouting at Jinky and all this kind of stuff. And with the passage of time, you just think, that never happened. Nobody gave Jock Steen or Jimmy Johnson a hard time, surely. Phil was like, oh, I remember it. It happened. It certainly did.
It's all for this perception that, that the Lisbon Lions were playing 9 out of 10 games every single week.
Never had a bad week.
Never had a bad week. That never happened. So, old people, what can you say?
The other thing I was going to say actually is in relation to our perception of the group and the new format, Alan, Jim's absolutely right. We could be mumping and moaning about it if the tables were turned. But you're looking at that, and we're sitting pretty comfortably, if you like, because I think my target certainly at the beginning of the campaign was to fit into that middle area of the league and get a playoff out of it. Maybe getting a wee bit enthused and thinking maybe we can be one of the seeded teams and finish higher up in that middle section. But nothing is as expected in this group. I mean, I didn't expect Aston Villa to get beat by Club Brugge. You were looking at the fixtures thinking that Bruges would maybe be one of the more likely games you would win at home. Wasn't sure about Leipzig, wasn't sure about Atalanta. So what are your thoughts so far, Alan, anyway, on the structure of this new format?
I mean, it's very rare that, UEFA or indeed any football governing body does anything that actually you sort of think, do you know what, that was really good. But I do, and I know, as Jim says, I take the point that there's probably outcome bias here in terms of Celtic are performing well, therefore we're all enthusiastic about it. But looking at it, taking a step back, looking at the way that the results have played out, for example, Zagreb losing by 7 goals in Germany into Bayern Munich, and then being unbeaten in the next 3 games. So what I think is added a bit of unpredictability and jeopardy for the top teams is that it's just the simple fact that you're not playing teams twice, home and away, right? So if we played Leipzig home and away, they might have a bad day like they did the other night. But you can almost guarantee that if we played them at home, right, they wouldn't make the same mistakes again. And being the better resourced team with a better quality squad, we probably would have got, a really hard night if we played them away from home. And when you're in that group stage of playing 6 games, three opponents home and away, the big clubs have always got a chance to rectify any tactical missteps or what have you. So what I think this format does is, number one, it will highlight the coaches, even the coaches at the very big clubs who are genuinely really good coaches, because they know that they're only playing Bruges once, but they've done their homework and they know what to expect. And even though they've got better resources, they set out to beat Bruges in a sensible way. Versus those that might think, and I'm not saying that Marco Rosa did this, but he might have thought, well, Dortmund put 7 past them. They're a joke, we're not too worried about this. I'm not saying that's what he did. I'm sure he didn't do that. I mean, I watched Leipzig against Dortmund on Saturday, and they were really poor. So, I was kind of expecting a reaction, really positive from them, that they wouldn't be so poor again. But I thought Celtic didn't let them play, to be fair. So that a lot of that credit goes to Celtic. But back to the format, as you said, I think this playing one game, it doesn't let the corrections that can go on in a group where the better resource team can kind of recalibrate if they have an off day and get the better of the same opponent in the second game. So, it'd be very unusual for Manchester City to drop points to the same opponent twice, right? But once, it's a bit like traditional, cup tie. It's a bit more variability at play here. So I think that element and the evidence is in the table. Clubs like PSG, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, even are not anywhere near the top, and actually have got a bit of a scrap on their hands to make sure that they even get into that sort of middle section. So I think it has been great for that sense. That's not through a Celtic lens. I think that's just through a competitiveness, the amount of variability it adds, the amount of jeopardy it seems to be adding for the top clubs, which is great and probably not what they intended when they did it.
I think it's good to play different teams. I think that's good. The fact that you're playing eight teams instead of 3,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's really good. But at the end of the day, I think this is all about money, as usual. And I think and like Alan said, because we're in it and we're actually doing well, I think we're a bit biased in terms of how we're actually viewing it. I think if we weren't competing in the Champions League this season, and there's 32 teams in there, and they're playing all these games to get rid of 8 teams, it's taking a hammer to crack a nut for me. And it's just about how many more games can we get you to play and how much more money can you earn? Because we're in it, we're thinking, this is good. We can make a few bob by playing different teams. In the same way that I think, I've said before, that I think one of the reasons the SPFL is so turgid is we're playing teams 4 times a season, and that's why we should, I'm sure, I don't get to away games, but I'm sure if you're a Celtic fan going to away games, you'd rather go to Capello once a season rather than going to Ross County twice. You'd rather go to East End Park once a season rather than going to Fir Park twice a season. So extend the league, play less games, or whatever. Just what am I talking about? Yeah, Champions League. Yeah, there's more because you're playing 8 teams. That's good. And I hadn't really thought about the points Alan's making, that it's actually more difficult probably for the bigger teams, which is good as well. So, and that makes it exciting. So, and talking about us learning, I think the bigger teams will learn this season, because I think if they end up maybe not getting into the last 16, whatever, they won't make the same mistake next season.
I like the way that you tied it in to what's happening in Scotland, Jim, because I think if you look at this and people are looking at it saying it's really entertaining, it's been a success, as Alan says, rather, the authorities have made a change that people are actually embracing, then you could say, well, look how it's worked here. We're not looking for a 36-team Scottish Premier League, but we are looking for a bigger league. I've always been a great believer in 2 big leagues, and then the rest of Scottish football should be regionalised. Financially, it makes sense. And then obviously the promotion and relegation will decide who's in the top 2 leagues. But it's a good point you make there. And I'm going to bring in some comments before we move on to the Champions League poster boy. Now, last season it was Matt O'Reilly. This season it definitely is Jim's mate Nick. We know him as Nicolas Kühn. Jungle Lion, something of a tradition is that you come up first. So here we go. No booing and hissing at the back saying that he's my favourite. Kühn in Champions League Team of the Week. Yes, he has been pinging all over Europe. I was looking, Alan, at the performance stats, base level performance stats and data, which is what I'm good at. I leave all the intricate stuff to you. And when you look at the amount of goal contributions and goals scored that he has been party to this season, he's right up there. He's in the top 5. He's up there with guys like Harry Kane, etc. He's having an incredible season. What is it? It's easy for me to say, oh, he was rubbish last season, he's brilliant this season. What is it that's changed? I know that he looks a lot stronger physically. He's definitely got over those initial issues with his fitness. Loads of things are coming off from which weren't last season. He wasn't even trying a lot of it. But he's in incredible form. Can you unpack it and explain it to us and tell us what he's doing right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've almost deliberately not done a deep dive on Kühn this season yet. One, for superstitious reasons. I don't want his great form to come to an end. Because actually, when I've done a deep dive on certain players during the season, like I did one on Scales, I did one on Taylor, and then suddenly the form, the drop. So I'm kind of a bit reluctant to do that. So I haven't really looked at him really closely. I think we underestimate a couple of things. One is just players coming to new countries, settling and adopting. I think they're human beings at the end of the day, and everybody's different. So it takes everybody a different amount of time to settle in and become acclimatized, not just to the city, to the country, to everything around that, but also the football club, the way of working, the staff, the teammates, etc. And then obviously, he did have this medical issue with his teeth, which seems to have, and I'm sure anyone who's had root canal type treatment or anything really, it tends to bring you down, especially if you're losing a lot of weight as a professional athlete as well on the back of it. So he's obviously in much better physical condition. He's playing in a team that's and it's really the theme of the season for me, and this is really on Rodgers, is creating that cohesion, that consistency of performance that we're seeing. Everybody seems to know their jobs. If you look at the runs that Johnston, Engels and Kühn make off the ball down that right-hand side in particular, then you can see a lot of understanding and almost rehearsal of those moves. It's almost a kind of balletic, really, in the way that they move around the opposition to create those overlaps, underlaps, and overloads. And that's really what it's all about in those areas, what Rodgers is trying to do. So that all helps. That cohesion that I'm talking about, having those players around you like Johnston, who's obviously having a tremendous season, having him behind you all helps. But he's clearly a talented individual in terms of his technical skills, and B, he has that pace, that top end pace, which he cannot coach really, and is the thing that scares most defenses. But the little bit, great timing. I've just put out an article on our new Huddle Breakdown site. Please all use an email to subscribe to the site. Just type in Huddle Breakdown and you'll go there. And I'm starting to build what I'm calling a game IQ model, really trying to not say, who's the most productive player and who's the best player, who's the worst player, but which player displays the most game intelligence. So that's thinking about metrics that would reveal that. So this is thinking about more quality than quantity, for example. So let me come back to Kühn again. The article that I've just put out focused on two elements of attacker IQ. One is the average XG of each shot taken. So it's not the volume, it's not the total XG, it's not the volume of shots, it's the average XG of each shot. So it's the quality, the average quality of shot taken and the average quality of chances created, right? And what we actually see is, if we look at, going back as far as I can with the data, which I think is, for this data, is probably back to 17, 18, if I recall, and look at all the wingers that I've mapped, amazingly, Maeda and Kühn, score the highest as far as that combined profile of high average XG per shot, high average XA per chance. So Maeda, we tend to characterize Maeda a little bit as this kind of robotic, unnatural player with, incredible energy, preternatural levels of fitness and speed that hammers around the pitch. But when he gets on the ball, it's kind of random what happens. But that isn't actually the case. He's not a volume guy like Jota, where every 10 minutes the crowd are on their feet because he's done something. He's taken a man on, or he's tried a curler into the top corner, or he's whipped a ball across the 6-yard box. Maeda's not that player. But when Maeda does put the ball in, and when Maeda does take a shot, they're of high quality. So that all speaks to decision making. And it's the same with Kühn. Kühn's a little bit, I think, from memory, a little bit better on shot selection, and it's his goals that have stood out this season, and a little bit less than Maeda on the chance creation. But they're both up there, both profile on those two metrics, which are measuring IQ. They're not measuring who's the best player, who's the most productive. They're looking at IQ. Those two are actually profiling, better than the likes of Jota and and people like that. So why is he doing well? He's fit, he's confident, he's in a coherent system. And what we seem to be seeing is this is a player who actually makes good decisions and actually has good game IQ. So that's my kind of analysis so far.
Well, what I would urge everybody to do is get involved in the Huddle Breakdown. Get registering on the site. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube as well. Jim, I've had a couple of people coming in asking about if you know the history. I know you guys do. I like reading up on the history as well. But the other day, we celebrated 137 years of unbroken history. And obviously, we had our mass down at the birthplace of Celtic, St Mary's in the Kilton. Fantastic to see Brendan Rodgers down there. Recording a video as well for the foundation appeal, which is tremendous to see the club embracing the birthplace again, as we do once a year. If you know the history, Jim, there was a rescheduling. Fill us in, because there's a few people in the comment section who I think may have tickets and are just looking for a wee update. There's Tony, Hail Hail. He's doing a job in Lindsay, Mona Celtic. What's happening with If You Know the History? If Tony asks, we must respond.
Shameless plug time. Yeah, still gutted. Had to reschedule it 2 days before it was meant to be on. New dates confirmed, 3rd to the 5th of April at Webster's Theatre. Webster's, it's pantomime season soon. Then it's getting refurbished from January to early March, so we'll be on a few weeks after that. As I mentioned last time, unfortunately, some of the cast are contractually committed to doing other things. I need to recast some of the parts, but one really good piece of news, good news the other day, was the comedy genius that is Des McLean is free. So we're getting Des back in, and anyone who saw Des and Bendel at Bertie will know what an absolute comedy genius the man is. So Des is available. So I'm looking forward to that. And we had virtually 4 sellout shows before we had to reschedule it. And the majority of people have hung on to their tickets, like Tony there, I'm sure. So that's very much appreciated. So hopefully we can get back to the 4 sellouts again. It's the perfect Christmas stocking filler. If you know history, 3rd to the 5th of April, Webster Theatre, Glasgow. That's the end of my shameless plug. I'll pick up an Acsom mug now and say, look,
there's another shameless plug. Look at that.
Yeah. So, 3rd to the 5th of April. Thank you.
We'll be sharing the links on the socials, Jim. Absolutely brilliant news. Well done for overcoming that wee challenge or sizable challenge that was thrown in your path. Second prize FC. Has Kühn replaced Jota? Or are they 2 different players with different attributes? Well, Alan has obviously tapped into some of that, second prize FC. And I think that, again, we spoke yesterday about, creating our own heroes, Jim. And a couple of managers have spoken about that, previously. And we do look back, and it's important to look back into the history. It's so illustrious. But we are. I mean, you lose Matt O'Reilly. You think, how can we replace it? He was the poster boy. And now you've got a guy, different position, in Nicolas Kühn that we all adore. There's always another hero around the corner at Celtic, isn't there?
Of course there is. And I think Kühn's, obviously Alan's got the stats. Kühn's now starting to do the stuff Jota did, coming up with big goals and big games. And Alan also mentioned confidence. And confidence is key with any professional athlete, particularly team sports as well. Because Kühn knows he's now one of the first names on the team sheet. Whereas last season, he wasn't playing so well. He was trying to settle in. He wasn't sure if he was going to get a game or not. You come on the substitute with 20 minutes to go. How much of an impact he made? He's now a kind of go-to guy. He's the guy that both his teammates and the fans are looking to do something. So that just means so much if you're a football player. And also, Alan mentioned that wee triangle of Engels and Johnson. Johnson's playing out his skin this season as well, maybe getting a new deal. So that's good as well. So those wee kind of combinations, those wee kind of triangles, and maybe we don't have that so much on the left-hand side. Maybe that's something we have to maybe have a wee look at. But yeah, I think things are down to confidence. And in terms of the history of the club, new heroes, and losing Matt O'Reilly, most of the fans were pretty devastated at that. And obviously got that really bad injury. Maybe that's the fact he's not playing and we can't actually see him and think, oh, look, we're missing. Maybe that's kind of dulled it a wee bit for us. But we're playing some great football. So we're 9 points clear. We're 9 points clear of our usual main rivals. I think Aberdeen will fall off pretty quickly, and we have to make sure that we don't do what we did last season, where we give oxygen to other teams. Because in actual fact, this Sunday's game was the game last season that we gave the title race a bit of oxygen by making a mess in that game. But forever making new heroes. That's the great thing about the club, and forever making fantastic new experiences like we had on Tuesday night.
I know, great memories. And also, through Celtic, you make some great friendships as well. Magnet67 watched the game back again last night. Some of the touches and quick feet by Rio, Kühn, Kyogo, etc. was pure filth. says Magnet67. I think you liked it. Jay Conley, Jay Larkin. Ida, Bernardo for Kyogo and Engels will be the only changes, I reckon. Scales for Carter Vickers, possibly, depending on the fitness. We will be touching on the game, obviously, on Sunday against Kilmarnock. It's away from home. This is the thing, though, Alan, isn't it? Being a team from Scotland, 1 minute it's the highs of a magical European night, against a top-class team. And then, it's not as simple as just coming home and then steamrolling the opposition on the Sunday. This has its own challenges on Sunday, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you go by any of the kind of benchmarking that there is out there. There's various things, whether it's UEFA coefficients, whether it's ELO rankings, and all that sort of thing. You sort of think, why are Celtic? They're playing Kilmarnock. Oh my God, they should blow them away. This is a really kind of poorly ranked team, etc., etc. But it comes back to the opposite of what we're talking about in terms of the new Champions League format. Kilmarnock play Celtic at least 4 times a season, right? They're not overawed by Celtic. They're not scared of Celtic. They've played them so many times. They're familiar with Celtic. They know what the challenges are going to be, and they have time to prepare and specifically nullify those challenges. So it isn't as straightforward when a team is just hell bent on stopping you playing. Right? They know they're not going to go toe to toe. All they're trying to do is stop you playing, and that's their goal. And they're not overawed by you. They're not like, Bayern Munich are coming to town. It's not that. It's like Celtic, all those people in the Kilmarnock team have played Celtic, dozens of times before. None of that sort of fear factor or, starry-eyedness is kind of there. So it is a different challenge, as well as the sort of environmental factors. Players like, Hatate was amazing on Tuesday night. He tends to perhaps not be as amazing in front of 5,000 people on a Sunday afternoon. Some players are like that, right? So, all that comes into it. But I do think that there's such a calmness, a confidence, a consistency, and a cohesion to all the C's about this Celtic team that, and given the international break that's coming up, my expectation is that Rodgers will play the strongest possible team he can. The caveats, I would say, would possibly CCVs being kind of managed at the moment, and maybe would bringing Scales in really weaken the team that much, the way that those 3 centre-halves are playing at the moment? Probably not. So I could see a case for Scales coming in for Carter Vickers. He might decide that he does the better option than Kyogo on that pitch. It worked so well in the 5-0 game at the end of last season. And then it really depends on, when Kühn came off, he immediately had his hamstring on ice. So it really depends on, obviously, that's not then the pitch that you're going to risk him for on that. But, we've had the best part of 5 days between the games, which is more than enough rest time between matches. So it will be interesting to see the press conference later, the little snippets they put out on social media about training, to see if Kühn, Carter Vickers are fully involved in the first team training. But as I say, I think Celtic are going to go big. Rodgers will want to end this little block of games with the international break on a high. He won't want, as Jim said, what you said, won't want to give the oxygen to the opposition. Aberdeen are on the same number of points as us. They'll be playing the night before. I'm sure they'll probably beat Dundee at home. So, we don't want to go into the natural break, second, right? So, for all those reasons, and the fact that, there's no reason why the players can't be full pelt in this game because of the amount of days they've had between, the need to keep momentum, I think we'll go big. We'll go as strong as we can, with the only caveats being those that I mentioned.
Yes, I think I would agree with that. When we're talking about Ida, he's maybe one of the kind of bigger signings, Jim, who hasn't had a great run of games. And because of that, he's maybe not scored the goals that we would have expected after the protracted negotiations with Norwich to bring him in. But I want to lead that by saying that, Brendan Rodgers almost, I think, threw the gauntlet down last season when he was becoming frustrated with some of the guys that had come in the summer. He wasn't playing them. He had a core group of players that he stuck with. He could trust them, and they got us over the line. And we added that, we supplemented that with Kühn, who didn't really play that well last season, and Ida. But what's happened is we've made Ida a permanent signing at 8.5. Engels, of course, has come in at 11. We've broken the transfer record twice in one window. We've also brought in Trusty at 6. Bigger signings than normal for Celtic, certainly all within the same window. And I know we had the money from Matt O'Reilly's sale, Jim. But surely the performances that we're seeing domestically and in Europe, because the Aberdeen result was tremendous. We beat Rangers comfortably. We're sitting top of the league unbeaten, and obviously we've had 2 really good results back to back in Europe. Does he say to the board, "This is what you get if you back me properly, and we're not looking for the next project, and we're not trying to bring in players for 2 and 3 million, although it can work, a la Bernardo and Kühn. Back me, and this is the results that you get." He's got a strong argument, surely, Jim.
Well, as I said, I think we'll wait to the end of this wee Champions League 8 games thing, and let's just see where we are before we go to that one. Just to go back, I agree with all the points Alan made about Kilmarnock game on Sunday. I think it's ridiculous that we've got Mickey Mouse Park, and they're not going to replace it till the year after next. Is that right? The season after next, they're not going to replace that, Kilmarnock. And we've got a chief executive earning £400,000 a year presiding over this shambles of a league that we're in. So that's a wee rant. That's a mini rant. 40 minutes in, a mini rant.
Quite short for you, Jim.
Yeah, just can't be bored. Just kind of, we talked earlier about the changes in the Champions League at the highest level, and we can't change this Mickey Mouse League of ours to make it better. That's a constant frustration, and the fact that we're having to pick a team because of the park. So I don't think it's going to risk Carter Vickers on that park. Talking about maybe Eda's better because of that park. We shouldn't be talking about that park. And Kilmarnock won't sell tickets to Celtic fans, and it'll be half empty, and it'll be a hot. Anyway.
Jim, the Eda, I would say the Eda decision is more a footballing one. It's more about the sort of the height. Kilmarnock are a really strong team, set piece orientated. So just that greater height and physicality in the team was really more the point. Sure.
But also I just have my rant about the pitch in terms of it'll look terrible on TV.
Carry on as you were.
Thank you, my man. It'll look terrible on TV as well. You have, and if it's a sunny day, you'll have it. It's just the optics of it are just hopeless, and we really need some change within the game in Scotland. Yeah, I mean, we've spent big, and if we manage to get through into that, whether it's that kind of playoff into the last 16, which we're looking good to do. Yeah, I think he's shown that, but I think you have to take it over a number of games. Let's see what happens next, because I said, what happens without being negative? What happens if we get horsed in the next game? So I think if you take it over that length of those 8 games, I think that's a good point at which to look back and say, how's it been? But as I said in the past, you don't have to spend big to get good players. If you actually, and Alan will know this, obviously, how many minutes has Eda played this season? How many minutes has Engels played compared to other people? Somebody like Luke McCowan, I think it's been a great signing. He stepped up to the plate against Motherwell when things were looking a bit dodgy. The other thing that I didn't mention at the start when we talked about looking at the last 14 days, Callum McGregor. I know Alan's mentioned the fact that he's maybe not hitting the stats he hit before, but you look at the Motherwell and Dundee game, we were kind of struggling, we were kind of clueless, and he comes back, Aberdeen bang, Leipzig bang. So you take Callum McGregor out of that team, you take a lot out of that team. And what was interesting was the Motherwell game in the first few minutes when Schmeichel put it to Bernardo and he didn't control it, and all of a sudden they nearly scored.
Yeah,
that's Callum McGregor. It's under control, and he's passing, he's moving. Another night he bossed the game as well. So we don't have to spend big to get the players in that we need. Certainly, and also the fact that, I think it's early days for them both. I think if we spent 10 million on Kühn, you could turn and say, well, look at that. That was it. Mm-hmm. Engels and Eda, it's still early days for them. And we'll have to see what that brings. But yeah, we've spent some decent money. And but we always have to be careful with the finances. We can't go too gung-ho. And I know you can have, I suppose it's kind of if you do speculate, how much did we make the other night? Was it 2.1 million or something?
Mm-hmm.
So these things also help as well. So yeah, let's wait to the end of the 8 games. Let's see where we are. Let's take one game at a time, as they say in the biz.
This is what I love during the transfer window, Jim. You're so cautious, which is obviously a virtue. However, you were basically saying, if they want 11 for him, give them 11. If they want 9 million for Eda, give them it. I love that, Jim. It really got you into that frame of mind that the normal punter is in. Spend the money, give them the money, bring in the player. Jean-Paul II, does Jim Moore live about Mount Florida? If he does, Jean-Paul II seen you the other day, Jim. You've been recognised in the street. There you go.
Well, here's
how make you feel?
Well, factual fact. 2 weeks ago, picking up my son and his wife up to town, and I was using my wife's car, so I was kind of no idea what I was doing half the time, and things were beeping and all sorts of stuff, and stopped at traffic lights, and there's other things were beeping, and I see some guy in a van beside me, and he's gesticulating, and it takes me 10 seconds to put the window down, and he says,
Was that aggressive gesticulation?
no,
or
no,
was
good, you know, like pointing and all that kind of stuff,
right.
and I'm thinking, obviously, all these noises that are beeping in this car, something must be wrong, and he said, your mates, he says, your lights are off, mate, and I just passed a police car, so he kind of saved me from getting caught, and he said, Jim, what podcast guy? Aye. Mention Carl next time. So Carl kind of saved me from getting a ticket for the
Well done,
cops.
Cal.
But yes,
Well
to answer
done.
the question, I do live in Battlefield, and that's why when I'm the other side, I'm behind the non-Celtic end of the stadium, so I have to go through the opposition fans when I walk to the games. Yes, I am.
There you go. And
Guilty as charged.
Is that also why the Aberdeen fan approached you? Or did they just realise you were a Celtic man?
No, there was obviously I was right in the middle of them all with my scarf on, feeling brave. I won't do that in the cup final next month, but that's a kind of hiding the scarf and putting your hood up sort of thing, having to walk the walk.
It's on my birthday. Hopefully we'll get a result. Here we go. James Devine. The German press were very disrespectful to Nicolas Kühn, but he proved to everyone he's a class act. He's spoken about his aspirations, James, for international recognition. And I think he's doing everything he possibly can. I mean, he was disappointing against Dortmund. We all were. All the players were. But a great performance. And it's good to see some of the Leipzig players coming out and being positive about Celtic's performance as well. Sometimes people can have sour grapes after the game. Willie Neal, what a time to be alive. Celtic playing unbelievable football at the moment. O'Reilly and Ange are what a distant memory these days. We still mention them from time to time, Willie. We had some good times with the guys. Robert Forrest, we're talking about Nicolas Kühn. He's not got toothache. Simple. That's why he's playing better. He's sorted out his tooth complaint. Danny Boy, I think you make a great point. It's called confidence. Confidence and momentum are huge in all sports, as we know. The Champions League, says David Canavan, is 100% better now. And Barca Boy says there is no outcome bias. The new format is excellent, much more interesting and varied. The previous CL format was boring in recent years. I think what happened was a lot of the fixtures looked the same in the Champions League, didn't they? Every year it was like the same kind of fixture, same teams playing each other. And this has freshened it up. On my point, Alan, about, upping the stakes when it comes to buying and maybe going up one notch and buying players that are in a different category and bringing in some more quality. I think it gives Brendan a good argument, even going into January. I don't know how he would like to strengthen in January, to push the envelope, push the boat out a wee bit more with the board. And the board have backed him. Got to credit them as well.
They have. I think we can declare the death. I think some people enjoyed my eulogy to the final resting of Rangers a couple of weeks ago, and similarly, actually, we may have to do a eulogy for the death of Lowell. It is officially no more, right? So this, and listen, Rogers teed this up in his comments earlier in the season, where he talked about the need to not be. You don't buy 10 players at 2 million. You maybe buy a couple of players at 8 million, and then you might have a couple of projects as well. It's that balance. I'm not absolutist about this. To me, it's just I want Celtic to operate by being the smartest club they can be as far as transfers, and that doesn't mean one size fits all. It doesn't mean slavish adherence to one model, right? If you look at, for example, Brighton as an example of clearly a very analytics-driven football club in terms of recruitment. They do spend significant amounts of money on young prospects, and I think Celtic have shown evidence of doing that. I mean, Engels is a lot of money for a young player, and then even Ida as well. And as you say, it's not buying 10 prospects; it's buying a couple of players that we believe that the ceiling of these players is very high. And that even if they're not the finished article on Engels, loads of rough edges, Ida, loads of rough edges, but you can see, I think we can all see that there are players there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't buy experienced players, because you can't just have a team of kids, right? You've got to mix it. So, I mean, Brighton, for example, they'll buy the Adam Lallanas, they'll buy the Pascal Grossis, but what you don't do is you don't spend a lot of money on transfer fees for these older players. You bring them in, hopefully, at the end of their contract for virtually just a signing on fee, and you might pay them a decent wage, but you don't waste a lot of your transfer budget on those types of players. But you need a sprinkling of them throughout the squad. You need your Schmeichel, you need your McGregor, you need your James Forrests, you need your Greg Taylors, because he's 27 now. You need those players around the team to help the young players. But where you are slavish is in the parameters that you operate in terms of what are the transfer fees I'm going to pay, what are the wages I'm going to pay, and you stick to that. So to me, there's not one size fits all. You should be looking at all age brackets as far as markets are concerned. You should be looking at all geographies as far as markets are concerned. You should have a framework, you should have a model, but it shouldn't be, oh, we only buy players under 21, or we only buy players under 20, or we only buy from this market. None of that. Or we only buy from these agents, right? None of that. It needs to be flexible. It needs to be, it needs to be focusing on buying value and potential, or value and in terms of more experienced players, you know what you're going to get and you know what you're paying for. It's the same principle as talked about McGregor there. So I think people were shocked. Was it last year? I can't remember when it was exactly, when McGregor was given his 5-year contract. Everyone was like, my God, he's 30 years old. Why are we giving him a 5-year contract? I was completely okay with that. And just to remind you of the reason for that is, if Celtic went to market and tried to buy a player of the same, that gives the same quality and value as 30-year-old Callum McGregor, we simply couldn't afford to do it. So two things are true at the same time. Callum McGregor's physical performance and performance data is on a natural age decline, and we gave him a 5-year contract, but it was the right thing to do because we couldn't replace him in the market. Therefore, to keep him at the football club is the best decision for the football club, right?
Yeah.
So, I think this season, I've not looked at Callum McGregor yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if his numbers have taken a bit of a bounce, because I think the impact of him not going away for what I think I worked out was 10 weeks, 10 weeks of Scotland internationals, 10 weeks of travel, 10 weeks of extra high intensity games, 10 weeks of games where you're probably against the ball for a lot of those games, right? He's not having that 10 weeks of travel, all that. So he's not got that. That actually does make a material difference to a footballer. So I think we're probably seeing the benefit of that. We might be seeing, if not an uptick in McGregor's performance, at least a leveling out of what had been that sort of natural age. I'll need to look at that more closely. But anyway, back to the transfer model. As I say, one size doesn't fit all. We need to look for value, and value is available at all ages and at all price points.
Yeah, I like the a lot of things that we perhaps have found from our report 2 years ago. That was obviously done by Gordon Strachan in his advisory role. Jim, I'm going to ask this one of you in relation to the TIFO that you brought up, the GB. We've given them loads of credit, and rightly so. We posed the question yesterday. Obviously, with the book being open, there were 5 Celtic legends. And I asked, who are the 5 most important figures at Celtic Football Club? We had great comments on the socials, great comments on the YouTube video. It's a difficult one because, if you say Brother Wilfred, you probably got to say John Glass, Jock Stein's going to be obviously in the discussion. Fergus McCann's in the discussion. You might then look at the talent on the park. Who's the greatest ever Celt or your favourite Celt? And I threw the wee low bowler yesterday. I threw the grenade in and ran away. Where does Peter Lobel come into the discussion? Where's Martin O'Neill? If you were to pick out 5, Sir Robert Kelly, where is he in the discussion? If you were to pick out 5, Jim, if you can, who would they be? I know Fergus would be in your 5.
So is Marvin Compere not part of that? Is that
absolutely not? 60 minutes.
Well, in fact, if you come and see a play called, and if you know the history, you have a rather left field view on who the most important person in Celtic's history was. However, to answer the question, you have to go Wilfred, Stein, Fergus. Wilfred starts the team. Wilfred starts the club. Fergus saves the club. Jock Stein, obviously, because of Lisbon. After that, I don't know. After that, you could bring in Billy McNeill because he captained the Lisbon Lions. It's an on-the-field thing. So Robert Kelly, no, I don't think he makes it. I don't think Peter Lawwell makes the top number, whatever number you want to say. That would be the three I would go for straight away, because one starts it, one saves it. And if it wasn't for Lisbon, as I've said a number of times, and I've said in actually the plays, that before Lisbon, Celtic were pretty much not any more famous than Hibs. So when it was Lisbon changed everything. And to this day, it's changed everything, because we still talk about the Lisbon Lions. I was chatting to somebody last week, Geordie, youngish Geordie guy in his 30s, and he hadn't heard of the Fairs Cup one, which I wrote a play about in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
And that Fairs Cup winning Newcastle United team are their Lisbon Lions. And there's some of the younger fans have never heard of them, never mind, have vaguely recognised the achievement. So the fact that we're still talking about Lisbon Lions all these years on, and that's down to Jock Stein, that's what puts Celtic on the map, and that's what makes Celtic, basically. So Stein has to be there. Walford starts it, Ferg saves it, and then other two, whatever.
It's up for debate, isn't it?
Up for debate.
I like the Martin O'Neill discussion because of the generational kind of dominance that we have now, kick-started on the park, I believe, by Martin's teams. Just bring it up before I come to Alan, giving him a few seconds to think of his five. Stephen Mitzi, one. No one comments much on anything anyone types, plus comments are rarely mentioned by our hosts. Just an observation or a Friday afternoon moan after the high on Tuesday. Are we allowed to moan yet, Stephen? I'm still on that high of Tuesday. Give it a wee bit more time to settle. Just so you realise that it's probably 1,000 comments per 1 hour show comes through on the live stream. And the person in charge of the comments is the person hosting the show. So it's no easy to run through them. I have fallen victim due to bad eyesight and bringing up things that were inappropriate at times, from time to time even. And Double Denim has famously or infamously blocked people who have tuned in every day for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's not that easy, but we do try and bring up as much as possible. Smell the glove. I've had a wee example of this, not today, Smell the glove, but in the last week, that Scottish people love moaning. It's basically our national sport. It's in part of the culture. We're very good at it. Right, and Uncle Nobby's Steamboat, who's sorting out the Acsom Christmas night out? We've already sorted that out. Roy Aiken's coming. Peter Grant and Pat Bonner are coming. The ticket link's underneath the video. Come along for a big Acsom Christmas night out. We had a great discussion yesterday, and it's an education, actually, speaking to JP. He tells me things I have no idea about, and I go away and find out more. And it was all to do with the In Praise of Caesar, which was the Scott Sport tribute show after the Dundee win in 1988. And the soundtrack of it, of course, was the topic of conversation. So I might be playing some of that music on the Centenary Boys night as well.
That's Willie Maley. Sorry, Willie Maley's 4. Right, sorry.
Willie Maley, not Willie Maley's got, for me, he's got to be in there.
Sorry,
Brother Walfred, yes. Willie Maley, Jock Stein, Fergus McCann, and you can argue the toss about the fifth one. Yeah, people will say Martin O'Neill, people will say Jimmy Johnston. Yeah, it's a great question. It was our friend Stephen Mullen who came up with it. Giving you a few minutes to think about it, Alan. Who's your 5?
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to argue with the history man there. I mean, that would be disrespectful. So I think you've nailed the 4. If I'm honest with you, I'm not going to be contrarian or just come up with a different answer for the sake of it. That would be crass, really. So I think you've made a good choices and justified them well. If I had to pick a 5th, it would be Billy McNeill, really, because he's just been such a totem. The service he gave to Celtic. And just he's just a huge man in terms of just a huge presence. Everything about him, I think, is iconic. Billy McNeill, and he's everything to Celtic. There's nothing that Billy McNeill wouldn't have done for Celtic, and not much that he didn't do for Celtic. To be fair to him, so I would struggle to look past Billy McNeill in terms of that fifth member. But I wouldn't argue with anything else that you said on that.
Also, he's made the most appearances. That's another justification.
Yeah. And it's unlikely ever to be beaten, Jim. Yeah. Unlikely to ever be beaten. And by the way, that was when we were playing less games. Yeah. You weren't getting the amount of European games, for example, that we get now. A couple of names that have got to be in the equation, and P. O'Neill comes up with one of them. Jimmy McGrory. You've got to speak about Jimmy McCall. You've got to, the goals he scored. Not only that, he became the manager. Some famous results as a manager, 7-1 game, most notably. But also John Thompson, the man who gave his life for Celtic as well. You'd need to speak about him. Strangelove the Doctor, I would love to have that luxury of having someone who can come in and just have a look at the comments, filtering out, introducing them to the show, etc. That would be the way forward, no doubt about it. But thanks every single person for getting involved. It's been an interesting discussion. There's a few more points to bring up before we wrap it up for this afternoon. And it's Stevie Boy, another left back and another striker. We're talking about the transfer window in January, of course. And if there's rumblings about anybody wanting to leave, I can see it if we continue in Europe, cover for them. I don't disagree with that, but I would probably throw in a winger. Now, I know that Yang looked as though he had purpose when he came on the other night. Alan, he seemed to click in well, which was great. I put out a wee stat yesterday about the lack of contribution of Palmer this season compared to the same point last season. He was kind of flying. He'd scored or contributed a goal every 87 minutes at this point last season. This season, he's not scored or assisted once. I think that's an area that, you're looking at the bench on a night like Tuesday night, you're thinking it would be good to have a game changer. What's your take, Alan? Are you thinking striker, winger, maybe even centre half?
So wing depth is an issue. I mean, Yang was, I thought, terrific actually when he came on. There was a moment in his appearance where I think he had the ball like 20 yards outside Celtic's own box, and his control, his bravery on the ball, he wriggled out of that difficult situation and broke up the park. I thought he was great. And actually, interestingly, the game IQ model that I refer to, Yang might not do too badly out of that. Now, I'd written Yang off a long time ago, if I'm honest with you. I just simply don't believe he's anywhere near the standard. But listen, if he does get a chance between now and then, but I do think Palmer, to me, I think that's a sell, get rid, right? He's not a Rodgers type of player. But so we need wing cover desperately. Probably need striker cover. We may need centre half cover because I think it might be based on the evidence of my eyes a case of managing him for quite some time. Maybe from now on, I don't know. Hopefully not. So and then you can't just have three centre backs that you trust. So probably cover in that respect. And we need to sort out the left back position because I don't know what's happening there. Taylor looks to be near signing a contract. There's murmurings that Valle may get recalled by Barcelona. The Tierney story won't go away. What is happening? What is happening in the left back world? So we need to sort that out, get a resolution for that part of the world. And I'm still concerned about central midfield, right? I am because Engels and Bernardo are young guys, and I do have hopes for them. I do think they'll turn out all right, but they're quite raw still. And they're nowhere near the finished article. We do still look a little bit short in central midfield, and we can't rely on Callum McGregor, and especially I'm talking about the big games and the European games. So I still think there's a lot of work to do. We still need to get rid of a few, but those are the areas that I would focus on myself.
Yeah, I threw a wee span on the works yesterday when we were talking about strikers because, Jim, I had the audacity to tip a youngster who's doing the business for our B team, 18 goals and 17 appearances, 18-year-old Daniel Cummings. If you're performing like that, why not put him on the bench? Let's see what he can do between now and the end of the year.
I think we're fortunate Maida's a kind of third striker if we're really struggling. I was really, Alan mentioned Yang the other night, which I thought was kind of quite bold of the manager, because you're thinking Jamesy Forrest is the obvious substitution experience. But so obviously he has confidence in Yang, and as Alan said, he was great, he's really good. So a bit like Kühn, maybe if he gets a run in the team and he gets a bit of confidence and maybe scores a goal or two, and then all of a sudden Yang's a great player. So football's one of these things. It's just things can change in an instant. You score a wonder goal and your confidence is boosted. You get a run of games, and Alan will say that because I've listened to him before. 900 minutes, is it, Alan? That's what you need.
Yes,
so unless you get your 900 minutes.
I think so. And Yang's in and out, right? But he had that start, didn't he? A couple of games ago against Dundee, I think it was, and it did feel like, oh, you really didn't take your chance there. You know what I mean?
You were hopeless.
Yeah.
Also, give you Alan experience. I said earlier, you don't have to spend a lot of money in the transfer market. I think we could do with an older head at the back, an older head in the middle of the park, and I think if either Kühn gets injured, we might be struggling. But I mean, it's kind of when we get to January, we could. I think Aberdeen will fall off pretty quickly, and I think we'll end up in quite a few. I think the league will be, hopefully, touch bits of wood here, finished or wrapped up well into by the end of January. So you're going to buy new players for the SPFL? No, I don't think you are. Are you buying players for next year's Champions League so early? And January is always a difficult time. So I'm not so sure that we'll go out and spend a lot of money. We tend not to do that in January anyway. A couple of old heads, yeah, maybe from some of the bigger leagues in the world, somebody from the Bundesliga or Serie A, something like that, who's maybe, as Alan said, a bit earlier coming to the end of their careers, like Adam Lallana type of stuff, something like that. I think would be good from a team point of view. But so we're not looking to buy a young guy to sell on for oodles of money, just somebody to kind of help the team along.
Yeah, different type of purchase. And of course, a couple of our lone boys are doing well. Burnaby at left back. Tumbleweed. Just as a tumbleweed there. Yes, Alan. Hey, it's absolutely head and hands.
He's also very similar to Taylor and very simple to Vi. I mean, I think we could do with a big, strong left back.
Yes,
physical
I
presence.
agree with that.
Because I think we are a bit small as a team, so some kind of big hulking left back would be handy. Anyway.
Johnny Kenny's doing well, obviously, over in the League Islands as well. So we'll see how this goes. And thanks, everybody, for getting involved. We'll be back, of course, on Sunday. But before then, we are going to go out tonight at 6 o'clock. We have Phil Differ, comedy genius, guys, comedy genius. Phil Differ on the show tonight at 6 o'clock. It goes live. Join us then for a wee chat and a walk down memory lane with Phil. Got a big guest lined up for next week. Hopefully have that confirmed today, but it will be a belter.
It's been great. I mean, the whole This Is Acsom thing's been brilliant. Well done. It's been, some of your guests, Mick Lynch, outstanding. Well done, young man. Well done.
It was great. And he wants to come to a Celtic game, so we'll see if that can happen as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Get involved in Acsom's Christmas night out. We'll obviously have some Christmas themes on the go, and the tickets are underneath this video. It's always a pleasure to be joined by Alan Morrison and Jim Orr on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.